welcome back to Dickinson Dulcimer's instruction videos for hammer dulcimer players. You'll recall that on the last video we learned the chords that are used in the keys of C, D, and G. We've also learned how to play simple chords. Remember that we first learned that a major chord is the first, third, and fifth notes in a scale. So here in the bottom right corner, in the valley on your dulcimer, is the G box, and we learned to play both a left hammer and a right hammer scale, and the notes are the G, if you'll recall, the G, and I'll use a left hammer scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And you'll remember that the G major chord, or any major chord, is the first, third, and fifth notes of the scale. So the first note was a G, the third note was a B, and the fifth note was a D. And so if you recall, we learned to play a major chord, a G major chord, in this G box, the bottom right box, by playing the first note, the third note, and the fifth note over and over. So do you remember this chord? That's the first, third, fifth, third, over and over. That was the first chord that we learned, a simple G major chord. Then we learned another way to play it by using left hammer here, right hammer here. Remember, we started with the right hammer on the G and the left hammer on the D, and we droned or continued to play the left hammer on this D while we moved the right hammer from the G to the B, and we played. And you'll recall that we moved that chord, that we played that same pattern and moved it up to here, so that we're now playing a C chord, and played the G chord again. And then we moved over to the mountain and played this same pattern. And we played the same pattern, and I had you practice the same chord pattern in all of the boxes. And then you'll remember that we learned about the 1-4-5 chord progression. We learned that in a key, most songs in the key, for instance, of G are played in the 1-4-5 chords, which is the G, the C, and the D. And if we were playing on the mountain and we used that same chord pattern that we had learned before, we could play this G chord, and the 4 chord is a C chord, and we could move it up to here. And then we could move back down to the G, and then the D chord is here, and we could move down to it. So we could play the 1-4-5 chords in the key of G by playing the same chord pattern. And that's a way to play the 1-4-5 chords, and we could do it in most of the keys, or find a way to use that same chord pattern and play in most of the keys. But they don't sound so good because the chords are so far apart. And today we're going to learn to play a little more complex version of the chords, the 1-4-5 chords. And the reason we're going to do it is because they sound better, and the chords are closer together. We don't have to move up and down so far, and the chords sound more cohesive and they sound together. And I think that you'll agree that they sound more pleasant. I've zoomed the camera in so that you can see the C box, which is right here, a little closer, so you can see the notes that I'm going to play. And I want you to watch very carefully as I show you the pattern for this chord, because it's going to be the pattern for the one chord in all of the keys that we've learned. Now we're going to be in the key of C, which is this box, and we're going to take the chord pattern we learned before, which is right hammer on the C, left hammer on the G, and then the right hammer moves up from the C to the E, and we continue to play the G with left hammer. So in the way we played the chord before was right hammer, left hammer, right hammer, left hammer, and we play that pattern over and over. All we're going to do different is we're going to add the octave of this C note here, which is here. This is a C note, and this is a C note. So we're going to take the chord pattern we've already learned, and we're going to add this octave. So now we're going to play the chord this way. It's very simple if you'll just think about using right hammer to move from the C to the E to the octave C. And that's all you do. And you play this G note with left hammer after each stroke so that it sounds like this. I want you to practice that pattern in all of the boxes, and you can begin here in the G box, in the valley, move up to the C box, move up here to the F box, go down, get on the mountain and move down to the bottom of the mountain, and we're playing the D box. Move up to the G box, and up to the C box. Now that's the one chord. That's a way to play the one chord, or actually you can use it for any chord in any chord progression, but for our purposes today, that is the way we're going to play the one chord. Now we're going to go back to the key of C, which was here, and we're going to learn the new chord progression in the key of C, which, if you'll recall, the three chords in the key of C are C, F, and G. And that progression, or that pattern that we just learned, is the one chord, the C chord. Now we're going to learn the four chord. To play the four chord, all we're going to do is move left hammer up from this G to the A. And we're going to play the first note, and the left hammer will play nothing but the A note for the four chord. And the right hammer will play the C, and it'll move from this E to this F. So the right hammer is going to play So let's look at what we did. The one chord, the right hammer moved from the C to the E to the C. We changed that when we moved to the four chord by having right hammer go, it started on the same note, the C, but it moved up to the F, and then it played the same note, which was the C. So it changed from this to this. And left hammer simply moved up from the G to the A. So here's what it looks like when you play the two together. We play the C chord, then we move to the F chord, back to the C chord. Remember that left hammer is pretty easy because in the C chord, the one chord, it always plays the G, and when it moves to the four chord, the F, it moves up one course to the A. So in right hammer really only has one note difference, and instead of playing the E, it goes up to the F. So again, it's for the one chord, and then for the four chord. Now let's look at the five chord. And notice in that 1 and 4 chord, you see how close together they are? The notes are all right together. Now another way to play the 1 and the 4 chord would be to play the C, and and move up to the F in the next marker. But that chord, that F chord, is so far away from this C chord that on many songs that doesn't sound pleasant. And so by learning this new way to play a 1 and a 4 chord that are close together, it's a more cohesive and it's a more pleasant sounding combination of chords, and that's why we're learning it this way. And so let's do it one more time. This is still in the C, 1 chord, and then move up to the F, and now we're going to learn the 5 chord, which in the key of C is a G. So in order to play the G, our left hammer is going to stay on the G where it was with the 1 chord, and right hammer is simply going to play the note below the C where we started on the 1 chord, below it and above it, and it'll sound like this. And the note here, which is below the octave. We're playing below the octave here and below the octave here. Below the C note here and below the octave C here. So we're playing. So let's move from the 1 chord to the 5 chord. The 1 chord and the 5 chord for left hammer never changes. It's always this note. And the 1 chord moves from here, the C, to E, to C, and for the 5 chord it moves below the C to the B, and it plays the G, and it plays the D, and the G, and it plays the B here, and the G. So it goes from here to here. So now let's review. We have a 1 chord, which is a 4 chord, back to the 1 chord, and to the 5 chord. And remember, we're playing in 3/4 time, which means we have 3 beats, which is 1, 2, 3. Each beat gets 2 notes. That's the first beat, second beat, third beat. So it's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3. And if you want to say the and between the numbers, it sometimes helps. But that is the 1, 4, and 5 chords in the key of C using a new pattern. Now let me demonstrate how nice these very simple chords can sound when you use them to accompany a song. My wife Janet is going to sing a verse of Amazing Grace, and I'm going to use these exact chords that you just learned. Isn't that a nice sound? I want you to practice these chords that we've learned in the key of G, which is the bottom right box on your 1211 Dulcimer. And if you have a 1514 Dulcimer, you certainly can play, begin down here on the D box, and you can play in the valley, and you can play in the A box on the mountain if you like. But again, for purposes of these videos, we are assuming everyone has a 1211 Dulcimer, and the bottom right box will be this G box. So practice in the G box and in the C box and the F up here, then move over to the mountain and practice in the D box and then the G and then the C. And let me show you one other thing that is kind of interesting and I think you'll like. If you do the same song that Janet sang a few moments ago, Amazing Grace, and perhaps you would prefer to sing it in the key of G, you can begin in the G box here for Amazing Grace. And if you prefer to do it in the key of C, you can do it where she sang it in the key of C by playing in the C box here. But let's assume that you are going to play Amazing Grace in the key of C as she did it a moment ago. You can play the first verse in the valley using the chord patterns that we just learned for Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. And you can play it, the whole first verse, exactly as I played it before, but then if you do a second verse, you can move from this C box to this C box on the mountain. So it would sound like this. Then you would move up. Same pattern. Practice those three chords, the 1, 4, 5 chords, in all of the boxes that we've learned until you're very comfortable with them and your muscle memory kicks in and you can play the chords without thinking about the individual notes. That's always the goal. And if you have trouble, just play 1 or 2 notes at a time till you learn them, and then add a couple of notes until you can play the whole chord progression, the 1, 4, 5 chord progression, and then move around to the different boxes. And another thing that's very important for you to do as you practice these chords, say the chords out loud as you play them. If you're in the G box, say 1 chord G, 4 chord C, 1 chord G, 5 chord D as you play the chords. That'll help you learn the chords and remember them. Now once you've mastered these chords and the chord changes, you will have reached a very important milestone in your development as a hammer dulcimer player. Now in the next video, we're going to learn the difference in playing in 3/4 and 4/4 or 3/4 and 4/4 time. Don't give up. Don't get discouraged. I know that it's a lot of hard work, but it is truly worth it. Again, I want to remind you that these video lessons are free, and we ask only 2 things of you. First, leave a YouTube comment to help others know whether these videos were helpful to you. And second, please visit us at dickinsondulcimer.com and join our free email list. If you'll do that, we'll keep you updated when we post new videos. And while you're there, please take a look at our instruction manual that's displayed on the home page. It is a companion manual to these free video lessons, and if you like what you see, you can purchase one right there on the website. Until next time, this is Jess Dickinson. Keep practicing, and we'll see you on the next video.